Okay, welcome everybody to the Shiur here. I'm here at Yahrzeit Torah, my alma mater, and thank you for joining me for the Shiur lezchar nishmas Harav Daniel ben Eilihu David. This coming Wednesday night, Tu B'Shvat is my father's Yahrzeit, first Yahrzeit. I'm also going to recognize the memory of Ron Simon, whose Yahrzeit is the 13th of Shvat, who will weave him in also as well. So which is his fifth Yahrzeit. So first I want to give a kar sato, first of all, to Rabbi Eli to inviting me. He keeps inviting me every year, which is very appreciate that. Next, to thank my chavrusa, Rabbi Yoni Sacks, who I learn with every day. We just learn this area, and as well as my weekly chavrusa with Rabbi Mann to discuss some of his ideas. So I'm blessed with great chaverim and rebbeim, as many people here today are as well. So I want to begin with a story, which I think will get everybody in the perspective. So my father, just for those who don't know, my father started Yeshiva Or Tzafon, North Yeshiva High School in 1974. Started the Torah Academy in Suffolk County in 1988. Started Masoret with Rabbi Mann in 1992. And then he moved to Eretz Yisrael in 2001, and he taught with Rabbi Chaim Ozer Chait at Mechon Penzer, and then unfortunately closed. And then he was there. Then he went to yeshiva. He went to the Gush Etzion for 3 years, and then toward his last till his last week of his life, he had a series of charusha throughout his day. That was basically a big part of his life. So when I would go visit him in Israel, we would do the various errands that my mother would send us to, which were typically the makola at the store. We'd go to the store and we'd have a schmooze. And this is a scenario. We go into the store. Invariably around the candy section were children. He could not resist. He would go up to them, smile at them with his little twinkly eyes and say, and in Israel, in Hebrew, so new, what did you learn today? Now, just think about that. That's a rather invasive question. How would you respond to somebody who goes to you and say, so what did you learn today? But he never was rejected. Everybody, in fact, they felt this is going to be fun for some reason. He'd ask them questions, and then they would ask, we're learning this Chumash, we're learning this Mishnah, and then he would engage in the topic because he was familiar with whatever they were learning. And that would go on, and he would just enjoy the joy of shared learning, enjoying the joy of learning. My father heard a chiddush. If anybody witnesses who remembers him, when he heard a chiddush right shade, you just light up. And that infectious, authentic, genuine element really what was motivating him to start all these various institutions. As Rabbi Matt Schneeweiss pointed out, he called them very affectionately the Johnny Appleseed of Torah. Wherever he went, he started Torah institutions. He taught Torah wherever he is. So therefore, when I'm thinking about what am I going to learn, we're going to learn together, will be appropriate, is the area of the Rebbe-Talmud relationship and the kavod of the Talmud to the Rav and the kavod of the Rav to the Talmud, which I don't think is frequently discussed. So, and to explore that, because that was a big part of who my father was and what he was all about. So I want to get into that. Now, the category, when we say a Rav, we don't mean any rabbi or any rabbi who specifically taught you Torah. I have sheets over here. Is talking about the category called a Rebbe Muvhak. What is a Rebbe Muvhak? The Ram described a person who taught you Rov Chachmaso. What does Rov Chachmaso mean? Is that a quantitative phenomenon? So the Rav, in one of his Yahrzeit Shiurim, gave the example of himself. He says, who was his Rebbe Muvhak? Was his father, Rav Moshe Soloveitchik, Zecher Tzaddik L'Bracha. But he asked the following question. Since his father died in 1941, he had learned for literally 50 years, 40 years afterwards, way more than he learned during the time that he learned with his father. So is he to say that he got Rov Chachmasa from himself? In other words, who's the Rebbe? If it's purely a quantitative thing, then maybe he's his own Rebbe. But no, he said no. Rov Chachmasa does not mean a quantity. It means who gives you the paradigm, the methodology, the derech, the approach. in a certain sense, let's call it the software in which all the other applications are coming from. So the Rav viewed his father's Torah and his methodology, his particular expression of the Brisker Derech, was the platform, and all of his shiurim were fundamentally emerging from that. I'm not saying they didn't have any further chidushim and elaborations methodologically, but fundamentally he viewed his father as a person who gave him his paradigm. I think he said he learned Be'iyun, 13 Masechtos. Pretty good. He didn't mean 13, he learned selections from 13 Masechtos. He meant 13 entire Masechtos, including Baba Kama and Siya. I mean, like he basically got the foundations of the Torah Sheba'al Peh from his father, who of course got it from his grandfather, Rav Chaim. And that's a Rebbe Muvak. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We, of course, famously referred to as Aseh Lecha Rav, make yourself a Rebbe. Means a Rebbe Muvak. Okay, those people who are Talmidim of the yeshiva, by and large, your Rebbe Muvak will be Rabbi Yisrael Chait, Rabbi Reuven Mann, Rabbi Pesach Chait, people who give you the paradigm in which you approach your learning from that point on, even though that you may have been in the Shiur for a certain amount of years and your learning career outside the yeshiva is for decades beyond that. It's the paradigm giver. That's the Rebbe Muvak. So that's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about any person that you go into a rabbi Shiur between Mincha and Meir. If he gives you learn something, that's what we're talking about. That's Kavod HaRav, and that's actually discussed in the 6th parak of Hilchos Talmud Torah. We're talking about the special laws, which are only found in the 5th chapter of Talmud Torah. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about, the Rebbe Muvak. Okay, so I'm going to share a screen so people joining us can see. I will translate every word, don't you worry. Okay, so the Rambam in Hilchos Talmud Torah, the laws of learning and teaching Torah, Parak Hey says, Kishem she'adam mitzuva b'chvod aviv uv'yiraso, just as the father is obligated to honor and have reverence for his father, kachu chai b'chvod rabo v'yiraso. He's chayav to have kavod harav and reverence for him. V'rabo yoser miyaviv, and his Rebbe more than his own father. Why? Sha'aviv heviyu l'chayil hazev, for his father brings him into this world. V'rabo shelimdu chachma, and the Rebbe who teaches him wisdom, heviyu l'chayil habad, brings you to the next world. I'm skipping a part because there's a lot of stuff in this particular halacha. Ve'ein l'cha kavod gadol michvod harav, v'lo maro yoser mimorah rav. So the greatest amount of kavod that a person shows to any human is to your Rebbe Muvak, and to reverence kavod and yira. Amru chachamim mora rabcha kimora shemayim. This is from Pirkei Avos. He quotes. He says the reverence you show to your Rebbe is like the fear of heaven. Okay, so there's a number of questions that come out of this. First of all, when you learn the Rambam in general, and you come to a section of halacha, and you want to know what mitzvos are included, you start at the beginning. You look at what they call the koteret, and you look how many mitzvahs are included. And if you look at Hilchos Talmud Torah, number one is Lilmod Torah, the mitzvah to learn Torah. Well, that makes sense. We're in Hilchos Talmud Torah. It's about learning Torah. And kavod, to show kavod to those who are melamdecha v'yodeh, those who teach it and know it. We should call it generally kavod harav. There's no mention of yira. And in both the two mitzvos, the mitzvah which is expressed in the 1st chapter and the mitzvah mentioned in the next chapter, has, like every mitzvah, well, what's the source in the Torah? Minolon, where do you know that from? Here, there's no source. It says, just as you're obligated to show kavod and yira to your parents, you got to show kavod to your Rav. And not only that, you got to show more kavod. Okay, so where's the halachic source? So when I was learning this particular piece, Rabbi Mann, he says, well, obviously the source is kibbud avim, which, okay, but that seems a little odd. Like, what's the source of my kavod to my Rebbe Muvak? The kavod for my parent, but which it somehow exceeds that. So we need to explain that a little more. So we have to understand how that emerged from that. Also, first of all, you see another thing of methodology of learning the Rambam is that the Rambam talks about kibbud avim in the 14th book in Hilchos Mamrim. Here, this is where in the 1st book, so basically the Rambam viewed his whole 14 book work as one entity that you had to become basically completely viewed as a complete holistic whole. You need to know the whole to know the whole. In other words, even though we're now in Hilchos Talmud Torah, which is in Sefer Hamada, you got to know, to fully appreciate that, you got to know everything. So I'm going to help you out. I'm going to take you the source of Hilchos Mamrim, Perek Vav. So now we're just going to take a little exploration here to Hilchos Mamrim. I just also another thing that's correct. I don't know if it caught anybody's ear, but when the Rambam quotes the Perek Avos, that the fear of your Rebbe should be like the fear of heaven. Doesn't that sound like a little extreme? Like, doesn't that sound like, I would say, borderline idolatrous? I mean, we have, we don't know where Moshe Rabbeinu was buried. Why? So he should not become deified. But I'm supposed to have fear of my Rebbe like the fear of God? I mean, those should be completely, there should be a wide chasm separating between my fear of Hashem and a fear of any person. But what Pirkei Avos squishes those together. So we want to explain that as well. Okay. So let's take a little journey to the laws of Kibbud Av V'Em. Always good to review that. So Kibbud Av V'Em, mitzvah aseh gedola, it's a great mitzvah. V'chein mora av v'em, shakla hakasa b'chvodo u'maraso. Honor and reverence of your parents. The Torah equated it with honoring and having reverence to Hashem, by analogy. And then he quotes Psukim here. So the fact that the term of kabed is viewed both, you should honor Hashem with your money. You should have, every man should have a reverence for his mother and his father. Because of es Hashem l'chaktira. Kiderach shetziva al kvod shemo hagadol moro, kach tziva al kvodam umoram. So too, just the same way you're obligated to have honor to the great name and have reverence to him, so too you're obligated in honoring them and showing mora to them. Okay, so that's so the question very simply is that's bizarre. What is the kavod Shem? What does honoring Hashem have anything to do with honoring your parents? I mean, honoring your parents. I mean, we feel intuitively that seems to be very important, but why would the Torah, the Chazal are saying, Shakla Kasa, the Torah equated them. Your parents are not deities. I mean, in what sense? By way of analogy, the Rambam always has one of the more challenging lines in every Rambam is the one word, the kishem, the just as. What is the analogy? So how is honoring your parents analogous in any sense of showing honor and reverence to your parents? You need to know that. In the same way you had kishem before, just as if you honor your parents, you have to show a kavod to your Rav, and even more so. What are these kishems? The kishems are always, he just slides them in there, but to really to take them and to dissect them requires a great focus. So those are the key questions. So just to review, what is the nature of the kavod of Rav, the Rebbe Muvhak? How is it analogous to Kibbud Av V'Em? And then as well as, isn't it nearly idolatrous to say that your reverence to Hashem, to your Rebbe should be like to Hashem? Okay, and what's the nature and how and in what sense is your parents kavod to your parents equated to kavod Shemayim? I mean, okay, in what sense? Okay, so those are the questions, and I want to start to move toward the answer. In order to appreciate the answer, we're going to look at a Gemara in Nida Lamed Aleph Lamed Aleph, which is rather famous. You probably have heard it. Tanu Rabbanan, Shlosha Shutafim Yesh Ba'adam HaKadosh Baruch Hu V'Av V'Imo. There are three partners in a person's creation: God, mother, and father. Now, the Gemara then says the mother and the father give various material elements. I'm not going to quote get into the details of their science at the time. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but I want to get to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's contribution. No same bo ruach uneshama v'klaster panim urias ha'ayin ushmias ha'ozen v'dibur peh v'hilach raglayim uvina v'haskel. And Hashem gives the person his spirit, his soul, the unique personality. Klaster panim means personality, his ability to see, his ear, his ability to hear, his speech, his ability to walk, and his understanding and his wisdom. So Okay, so who did the Gemara seem to leave out as part of the Rambam mentioned before that who is important because he gives you not only this world, he gives you the next world, he gives you the Rebbe, the Rebbe. So meanwhile, who are the main shutafim? It's mom, dad, and Hashem. Okay, mother and father give you your physical makeup due to your your genetic existence, and the Akash Baruch Hu gives you your soul and that element and all your sense perception to be able to be a thinking being and to allow all these faculties to work in harmony to be able to, not just be an animal. In other words, we are a biological creature. We're a mammal in a sense, but that which grants man from a mammal to a human is Akash Baruch Hu's contribution. So, yeah, question.
Interestingly, the list of you wouldn't think would include these physical things which are shared with animals.
Yes. I'm understanding that it's not simply that he didn't say give you an ear. Seems to be, I need to bring down the Rashi, but basically the point is that the ability for the sense perception to interface with the soul to be able to produce the Bina V'Haskel. In other words, the fact that your sense perception will then be brought into your imagination, and from your imagination be able to consider ideas and come up with ideas. That whole capacity from sense perception to concept, that whole infrastructure, Hashem grants you. It's not simply, he didn't say he gave you an ear. That's what mom and dad gives you in a certain sense. That's the genetic, pure, physicality. He's talking about Rashi brings that. I should have quoted the Rashi, but I have a rule: thou shalt not make the Marmakomo sheet more than 1 sheet long. So that's the rule. Okay, so I want to understand. So they highlight the role of the Rebbe, the father or the mother. What's the role of the Rebbe here? So, as a pivot point, I want to go back to the beginning and look at the pasuk in Bereshis. Vaychal Elokim bayom hashvi malachto asher asa, vayishpos bayom hashvi mikol malachto asher asa. And Hashem ceased on the seventh day his malacha, which he did, and he rested on the seventh day from all the malacha that he did. So I'm going to ask a very basic question: is how would you define the word malacha? How do you say malacha? What would you? Work, okay. So he could have said he ceased from the Bria, in other words, he was doing Bereshis bar Elokim, so he could have ceased the Bria. And also you could use the word avoda, which is work. He used the word malacha. What is the unique quality of malacha? Creative work. Well, what makes the work creative? Avoda can't be creative. There's a feature here. Yeah. Mendel, yes.
Intentional craft of some sort, no?
Intentional craft. So what makes what brings out the intentionality of the craft? Like we call malachas machshavas by Shabbos. It always presupposes one thing. What's that?
Yeah, you have a thought or a vision of what you want, and you implement that in material reality.
Exactly. You have a design, a blueprint, a thought, a machshava you are implementing. It's not just random actions, but rather you're bringing a design into being. Okay, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as it were, had a design in his mind, in his divine mind, of the universe. And he first brought the material, we'll call all the elements, and only HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows how he brought this universe into being. But that was the ultimate malacha, which is he had a design, that's Hashem's chachma, the matter, and then impacting that design into matter and producing a material universe. Vayar Elokim es kol asher aseh v'natan ma'od, and he saw that all the malacha that he had created was, in fact, very good. So all the subsystems that he made were tov, all came together to be one harmonious ecosystem on Earth and in the solar system and beyond the cosmos. So the metaphor that is used in Bereshis is Hashem is a craftsman. He does malacha. And how long is his job? His job is 6 days. and then he's done with the job. Like you hire a person for a deck, build the deck, how many days is it going to take? 6 days. Okay, great. Buy the materials, it's the lumber, the nails, the paint, etc. Where, let me see your design. He shows you the design. Here's the blueprint. This is what this is what's going to look like. And then he and his workers are going to take that design and with the materials bring it to being. HaKadosh Baruch Hu did all this himself. He had his chachma. He brought the materials into being. And step by step, stage by stage, and apparently over 4 billion years, it took him to create these 7 days of malacha. Okay? 6 days of malacha. All right? So that's the, now, with that introduction, we can ask ourselves, the question is, what steps of crafting a person does Hashem do, and what parts do the parents contribute? It's as far as the malacha of creating a child, of a person. So in order, we said there were 3 shutafim, there are 3 shutafim. So what does the Kadosh Baruch Hu does, and what does the parents do? In creating a person. Yes, Joe?
They actualize Hashem's plan.
Yes. And by doing what? By bringing what's called the material elements together and forming the material body, which is the fetus, which ultimately is the baby, which is the child. And in the design, in the malacha of creating a person, he brings the super added element, which we call the nefesh. In other words, there's beyond the material creature is this metaphysical element that is now associated with this being, which allows this little creature to grow up somehow or another and become a knowing creature, a child, a person who can ultimately have a Yedias Hashem. It's a remarkable thing. Tashmish is not a malacha because you're not changing there's no chefsa that you're changing. You're starting a process which will produce it. It's like it'd be called a grama. In other words, it's not, it's like, for example, by Shabbos, I have a raw steak. In my mind, I maintain a well-grilled and seasoned steak. I put it on the grill and I do the malacha of bishul, and then I produce the finished product. Tashmish does not have that. It's a grama. It's even in a certain sense, even more amazing that we can have a product of the Bria without. That's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu is involved. It's a very important element. It's funny you mentioned that the Karaites maintained that it was a malacha, and that's why it was Asr on Shabbos. Interestingly enough. Okay, so whatever. So say that's, but they didn't have.
Explain why they died out.
Okay. All right, we're moving on that one. Okay. All right. So now, what part of malacha, what part of crafting the child does neither Hashem or the parents do? This is the main point. What in the bringing the person into being what does Hashem nor the parents do? Exactly right. Rabbi Fistel is correct. And who does that? Exactly right.
Can you repeat that? I didn't hear that.
I will repeat that. So Rabbi Fistel had what is the let's call it the Makaba Pontish, the bringing the person into being. It is the Rebbe Muvak who takes this child, this person whose soul who is all potential, and actualizes soul. A Rebbe is a soul actualizer, a soul shaper, a soul creator. That's what a Rebbe really is. So therefore, Hashem in his act of creation provides all the material elements necessary for a person's physical existence, and together with the parents. And the parents, what did the Rama say? The parents do? Hey, view. Bring you to this world, brings you into and they also do other things. They also give you all the practical things. There are many things, and depending on the child, in fact, you can have a parent who's also doing double duty, is also a Rebbe to varying degrees. And Hashem, as we said in the Gemara there, completes the process by imparting the actual intellectual, moral, and ethical, brings the faculties where this could be actualized. And then the Rebbe, with his intellectual, moral, and ethical guidance, brings the Chachma to actualizing the person, which the Ram calls as Heviu L'chayev Olam Haba, to make him a living soul. So now we can understand the principle of kavod and yira. What being gets the ultimate kavod and yira? Kadosh Baruch Hu, because he's the absolute existence. Okay? Now, the parents are the maskirim. They remind you they remind you of kavod shamayim, but it's in direct proportion of their level of participation in the creation of the person. So the Rebbe and the parents are given kavod because they serve as conduits for his kavod. The Rebbe by bringing the soul to its fulfillment through wisdom, morality, and Torah, and the parents by providing the physical and practical foundation for the person's being. So therefore, the Rebbe has to have the most amount of kavod because he is the person who is putting the person in the position which reflects kavod shamayim to the highest degree. Now the Pirkei Avos, ye mora rabcha kemora shamayim, because they are the person who gives you both the tools and the capacity, and they therefore reflect kavod shamayim to the highest degree. So therefore, by analogy, we show kavod to them because they are the ones who are reflecting kavod shamayim to the highest degree. Okay, so the parents who are giving the physical and the practicality elements, they also have chiyuv of kavod and yira, but to a lesser extent because they're creating the substratum of man, but they're not creating man in actuality. Okay. Okay, is that clear? Before that's our basis. So therefore, now you can understand. So the kavod, there's no greater kavod of kavod Rav. In fact, if we go through the Rambam in the halachos there, basically, what's the role of a Talmud to a Rebbe? Just if you put it down to one word, what is your stance when you see your Rebbe? How should you see yourself? And you can reduce it down to one word as far as your kavod and your yira. One word answer. Which shows ultimate kavod. He is your blank. You are his eved, correct? He is. You have to treat him as an absolute superior being. Whatever service activities he needs, you must do. Yira, you cannot show any disrespect at all. Absolute kavod, because he is bringing he reflects kavod shamayim to the highest degree. He's bringing you into being. You have to show your humility in your stance. That is what the as the Rambam said before. Ein loch kavod gadol mikavod harav. There's no greater honor than kavod harav. V'lo mor yoser mikavod harav. That's the relationship. He's the Adon. He's the Rav. We even choose the same word, Rav, and you're the Eved. Yes, Joey. Yes. Okay. Good. So kavod. I'll say by parents. Kavod means in general is doing all the service activities, demonstrating the superiority of the parent, or I like to call the office of the parent, by doing all the things all the service activities of the butler, provide them food, clothing, escort them, do their errands, whatever a butler would do. That's kavod. Demonstrate the superiority by that their wishes are superior to yours. Yira is you can't sit in their seat, you cannot contradict them, you have to be extremely makbid. In fact, as the Ram even goes by kavod harav, if you're eating at the same table, you have to sit there like a person sitting l'sei melech. That's why only the Rav by Haseba on Seder night, you need to ask Rashus. Now, the Rebbe can always mochel the kavod. He can have a much more relaxed relationship. He's allowed to do that. That's his choice. And he has to give you Rashus to do even Haseba at the Seder. Okay, so it's a very, we don't see that level of, generally there seems to be an implicit mechila among all Rebbeim to their Talmidim, because basically Bisman is that people can't handle that rigorous kind of situation. But that, we're not here talking about how one should apply that. We're talking about what the principle is. So, so Yira is, I cannot contradict his superiority by demonstrating that I'm a superior by sitting in a seat, standing in a seat, contradicting him, in a way, certainly poskening poskening a child when he's there. That's an act of usurping. Ain't violation of Yira the Gadol Mizu. Kavod is, oh, let me help him get it out of the car. Let me take the groceries in. Let me move the garbage to the front. Let me do an errand. Whatever he needs. I'm available.
Microphone.
What? Sorry, say that again. I didn't catch that. Okay.
What would be similar to more about the commercial mind? Would there be any kind of
So,
commercial mind?
I mean, there's nobody else in the world that you have to have. We view ourselves we call ourselves Avdei Hashem. So he's the only person we treat as we're not allowed to be an Eved. But the only person that you must be an Eved to is your Rebbe Muvak. I mean, it's a remarkable institution.
Then where's mine? Is there anything similar?
Well, you have to. The only other being that gets this outstanding level of kavod is a Kadosh Baruch Hu. As a person in your life, that he gets kavod number one. Every kavod in every era is manifest more than parents, like the classic case. Your mother is coming in with groceries, and your Rebbe is coming in groceries. Who do you go to assist? You go help your Rebbe first. And no respect to disrespect your mom. And then you get your mother. And then you help your mom out. Why? Because he is bringing you, he reflects a greater kavod, because he is, in a certain sense, he's a greater creator than your mother is. She brought you material existence, physical existence. She taught you how to be a mensch, but he taught you to be a theoretical thinker, God willing. Right? So that's it. All right. So let's that's our step one. Now let's allow this to let's allow this to further grow and expand. Okay. We're good with this part. Okay, good. Let's keep on going. Next, the Rambam, and we're going to go back to the beginning of Hilchos Talmud Torah. There are a lot of stuff here. I'm going to only take some questions. This is, I mean, it's a piece of Rambam that just keeps on giving. So I can't, there are many shiurim in this couple of halachos here. So I'm not going to, just give you a little caveat. I'm not answering all the shilos because that would be multiple shiurim, which I'm not honestly prepared to give. Anyways, all right, here we go. Nashim va'avadim patur mitalmud Torah. Women and slaves are exempt from Talmud Torah. Okay. Now, again, women are obligated for Talmud Torah for other reasons, to know what to do, and Avos Hashem, but fundamentally, the rigorous obligation of Talmud Torah, which is to learn some portion by day and some portion by night, women don't have to do that. They're not in the mood, they don't have to learn. They can learn on Monday, they can learn on Sundays, they can learn on Wednesdays, whenever the Spirit moves them. Men, not so much, not at all. Aval katan avichayv lamdo Torah, but the child, the father must teach him Torah. You must instruct your sons to speak in them. We're talking about Torah. So the father is obligated to teach his son, and the mother is not obligated to teach her son, because only those who are obligated to learn are obligated to teach. That's a fascinating conversation in and of itself. Let's keep on going. We got another kishem. This is the night of kishems. Kishem sha'av chayav l'lamed es beno, kach chayav ad l'lamed es ben beno. Just as a person is obligated to teach his son, so too a person has to teach his grandson. Shneimar v'odata levanecha levanecha. I just want to say just a caveat. One of the things that my father really distinguished himself, he learned hours with all of his grandsons. Moshe was the beneficiary, but not only him. All the five sons. My five sons learned was homeschooling, so he was part of their teacher on a daily basis. So I don't know how many grandfathers learn with their grandsons every day for an hour or so, but that's just, he took this mitzvah, he exemplified this mitzvah to an extremely high level. Below beno ben beno, not only a grandchild, ela mitzvah al kol chacham Yisrael l'lamed es kol talmidim, but a person, any wise man of Israel, is obligated to teach all the students. even though they're not his biological children. You should teach your sons diligently. Banecha, your sons, Elu, Talmidecha. Who are your sons? Your students. Shetalmidim kuryim banim, because all your students are called children. How do we know that? From we have a case by Elisha, who had a Navi school. Shneimar vayetzu b'nei Neviim, and the b'nei Neviim, and the sons of the Neviim went out. So Elisha had a Navi school, a kind of a yeshiva. We don't really know what that was all about. And he referred to all those kids, all those students as his sons. Elisha had many sons. It's a remarkable thing. Okay, so I just have a couple of questions I want to focus upon, two precisely. Why is the father obligated to teach his son at such an early age? I mean, generally kids are exempt. What does that say about Yahda's concept of the role of parenthood, and how does it differ from the world's concept? And also, what mistaken concept of parents and Rebbe are being dispelled? This halacha is really a paradigm changer about how we look at parenting, how Judaism looks at parenting. Very different than the rest of the world. And what a Rebbe is also. As a new, we're going to add to the existing definition another dimension. What do most people believe that a parent's job with their children is?
So that he could be happy.
Raise a child to be happy. If they're a little more sophisticated, they might even say to be a responsible adult. But fundamentally, it's a psychological journey of nurturing, which it most certainly is. That is true. But the Rambam starts off of al katan adam chai v'lamdo Torah shne'emar v'dimatim osamet b'neichen l'rabban. A person, a father specifically, must take the child into the Talmud Torah enterprise at the big onset of his speech. When he starts to speak in Chazal, the Rambam quotes, what's the first thing? Talmud, Moshe, Tziva, Hashem, Mor Shakila, Sakov, that basically, that the language that the child, part of his, at the early onset of language acquisition, which is very early on, 2, 3, 4 years old, is to basically absorb sukkim and to become completely conversant. Ben Chamesh leMikra, Ben Esther leMishnah, Ben Chamesh leTalmud. Basically, a parent's job is, in addition to nurturing the child to become happy, psychologically capable person, to be an independent adult. Right? Kate used to use the line in parenting shiur, but is to bring the child in to the Talmud Torah enterprise, to join the Shalshelas HaMasorah. When does that must start? At the beginning, when the kid becomes even speaking, L'daber bam. Where you don't have it in the regular world. You send the kid off to school, and so he can become a functional, basically a worker. That's in America. So you get a good job. You send the kid to school. Not to be involved in, you're about to enterprise exploring Chachmas Hashem. When are we starting? You're age 2. We're going to teach you a pasuk, and then another pasuk, and another pasuk. And then, and based upon the law, depends on the child's capacity, nurturing them more and more and more. Okay, that's a paradigm shift. What completely different definition of Rebbe is? Many people here in the audience, I'm just talking to people on Zoom, go to college. So I want to contrast a Rebbe Mulak and a college professor. What's the difference? What? No protest, correct. Okay, good. What other elements there? What's the between a college professor and a Rebbe Mulak? They're both very smart men. Okay, so there's you would generally not. There are exceptions. You would not go to the college professor for guidance in life. What's his job? What's the college professor's job? What's his job? What's his job?
To give you factual knowledge about a particular area.
That's it. He's there. He is there just simply to teach you a certain body of knowledge. And the way that you come in is the way you come out, just that you now have that addition of that knowledge. And you know it, and not only that, it could be measured that you got an A on it, and that's it. He is not interested in you. He's not interested in your soul, in your worldview. The Rebbe is there to shape the guy's entire worldview, completely transforming him. He's there really. He's basically his spiritual father. A Rebbe sits down in a shiur and he sees 10, 15, 20 students. What must he psychologically see who's in front of him? He has 20 sons. They are his sons. And therefore, how would you be concerned about your biological sons? Absolutely and completely. That's the Rebbe's job. We're going to get into that more in detail. It's not student, they're not talmidim, they're banim. Talmidecha, elu, banecha, elu talmidecha. That's a completely paradigm shift. That's a different universe. Your Rebbe is your Abba. I'm going to say it, you know what I mean? So you may feel uncomfortable about that. But that fundamentally, he is a kind of Abba. Vishinanta levanecha. They don't say the vishinanta letamidecha. Doesn't say that. There's the framework of Talmud Torah is always Av and Ben, father and son. It's a completely different paradigm. Okay, we say it every day, but that's it. So and what is his job? He's there he's not just educating you with how many block Gemara did you learn, how many prakim did you learn, how many halachas did you learn. He's there to blow into you the nefesh chaya. He's there to actualize your soul. That's a different curricular perspective. The really question is like this. You walk into a shiur. What does the nefesh or the collective nefashot of my shiur need? That's not what do we have to cover, how many sfars we're going to give over today. It's what does the nefashos of these people in my shiur need? That's a different headspace. I don't think people think about it like that. That's really what's happening here. Okay, I mean, or you don't agree. If you don't, does that make sense to you? But you see, that's very radical. It's a very radical perspective. We're so immersed in America. I believe that the American concepts of education filter in even into our chinuch, and we don't see it as a nurturing of nefesh. That's what the Rebbe's job is, which is a massive responsibility now, if you think about it. Now, let's go into another halacha here. We begin to understand something else. But medvar amurim. So the Rambam says that a Rebbe has to, if a kid's not copying the idea, he has to repeat it as many times as the kid needs it, even 100 times, even though that he finds that highly annoying. Like, why didn't you figure out the first time or the second time? Now I'm at the 27th time. You know what I mean? Things might get violent. Okay, so but no, he has to do it. That's his. He has to kavushes yetzer. He has to do it. But medvar amurim bizman shelo hevinu atalmidim hadar mnei amko umnei daito shikitzara. He has to repeat the lesson because it's too deep or because their intellectual capacity is too weak. But if the Rebbe noticed that they are being lazy, okay, imagine that. Talmidim being lazy. Never saw that. And that's because they're not putting they're dialing it in. They're not really preparing. They're coming to we all seen that. A guy comes to shiur. He's like, he spent like 6 seconds to look at the Gemara, and he's just trying to not, trying to weasel his way into the shiur and see if he can follow it up enough, even though that he did not do the appropriate preparation. So what does the Rebbe have to do? Goes the Rebbe has to get angry at them and to shame them verbally. In order to make them sharp. You need to throw fear at them. So let me give you a story. My father, one of the good fortunes of my father was very fortunate in many ways. So one of my good fortunes was that in In September 1959, my father was a freshman at Yeshiva University, and because he had learned at the Tells and he learned at Chavetz Chaim, also with Chavrusa with Rabbi Chait, which was also and also Rabbi Moskowitz, he had some very good fortunes. Also the Munkacher Rebbe, interestingly enough, who before he was Hasidic. My father just lucked out, and he also had a little learning with Herschel Schechter and MTA. So my father was like sort of like the Forrest Gump of Judaism of the 20th century. He got to learn with all these amazing people just crossed his path. And his Sholem Meshiv was Rav Pinchas Scheinberg. I mean, like, how did that happen? Okay. Anyways, so he goes into Shiur. He sits down the first 5 minutes in the Rav Shiur. The Rav Shiur was only given to the Smicha students, but he was able to get in because he was advanced in his learning at that time. And Rabbi Soloveitchik says to him, "There's a Shiur in the Rambam. What is it?" My father told me many times, he said, at that moment, I wanted the earth to open up and swallow me alive. Because he was so petrified. The Rav was such an imposing character, and it was such a scary experience. He just wanted to just disappear. In fact, there was the most desirable spot in the Shiur was behind a pole like that, like a beam, so you could avoid detection. The Rav called on him. Fortunately, he had a near-death experience. He did know the Shiur in the Ram was, but he felt like he just had to make a Birchas Hagoma because he nearly died, okay? It was that, and he would tell me over the decades, that was that intense. In the Rav's book, this is recorded by Rabbi Rakef in his biography, two-volume biography of the Rav. In his book of the students' names, and in the Shiur, he had 2 words, Yada, Lo Yada. That's it. So why was that? Why did he take such a Zrog Mor Talmidim? Because in that Shiur was Rav Aaron Soloveitchik, Rav Aaron Lichtenstein, Rav Herschel Schechter, basically who became the who's who of rabbis and professors and Jewish community leaders. He knew that he's passing on the Masorah to the very best that American Orthodoxy has to offer. And he has an achrayus that they have to become the best Talmidei Chacham that he possibly can do it. And he was not going to tolerate mediocrity, especially he had people, he had geniuses in that place. It was all very bright people. So he was going to push them as hard as they can. So he was very tough with them. So tough, story goes, that they couldn't take it. They couldn't take it. So one person was there from Boston, and the guy from Boston went to go speak to the Rav's wife. He says, can you ask him to be a little nicer? They couldn't handle the level of harshness. He was just coming at them because he felt, you're in Torah boot camp, and I'm your staff sergeant, and you are going to and you are going to receive the Masorah, and I don't want I want you dialing it in. And you guys are every one of them you're tremendously capable, and I would be doing a disservice by not allowing your soul to nurture to that level to receive the Masorah to the extent that it could. And that's why he took a tremendous tough stance. And the Shiur would go on sometimes for 4 hours. I mean, it was just a remarkable experience. That was, of course, a pivotal experience for my father, and quite frankly, anybody else was in that Shiur. Okay, so there you see another point of Kavod Rav. So Kavod Rav, one concept is sort of a philosophical point. He is the direct conduit to the reality of Kadosh Baruch Hu because he's creating me metaphysically. So he is the source. He represents the metaphysical source of the world, Kadosh Baruch Hu. Practically, I have to show kavod because I need to maintain a position, a stance of humility. He knows, I do not know. I have to, even though I may be a person might think themselves very smart and accomplished, the Talmud has to maintain a position of humility. He has to do what? He has to take it. And if the Rebbe decides, obviously he has to use his in judgment, that there's time for the Rebbe that the Rebbe needs to yell at the Talmidim. If he makes that decision, that they need to accept that. They need to accept the Musar because it's the best for them. I remember in my own study time in the yeshiva in the learning year for 6.5 years, Right Shade yelled at us precisely 2 times. and I want to say, I want to go through details afterwards. We deserve it. Okay, so and it was important issues, but to say you got to use that appropriately and sparingly, but then the Talmidim have to take it because that's necessary for. He is your Rofen Nefashos. He is the one who's going to bring your soul into being. He knows what you need, and you and fundamentally, as he said, he's your Av. You got to take it, and he knows what's, and he will bring that into being. So that's the element there. Now let's go on to the kavod. What I want to focus on. This is all really hakdama to kavod of the Rebbe to the Talmud. Nobody ever talks about that. Baram does. Here we go. Kishem shetalmidim chayavim bechvod harav. Just as the students are obligated in honoring the Rebbe, kach harav tzarech l'chabed es talmidav l'karvan. The Rebbe has to honor his students and to bring them close. Kach amru chachamim ye'ra kavod talmidah chaviv alecha kishel chaverach. Your kavod to your talmidim should be like to your colleague, to your chavrusa, to your friend. But tzarach adam lizar b'talmidav. And a person has to be conscientious or careful with his students. Ula olam, and he must love them. Shehem habanim hamahanim b'olamazeh ulamava. For they are the students, they are the sons, again, going back to the same term, they are the children, they are your sons who benefit you in this world and the next world. Okay? I'm going to read the next halacha and then we'll ask some questions. HaTalmidim osifim chachmas harav u'marchivin libo. The students add wisdom to the Rebbe's knowledge and expand his mind. Amru chachamim harbe chachma limati mechabera yoser mi'arbosai betalmidai yoser mikulam. There's different girsas. This is the Yemenite version. Much wisdom I've learned from my colleagues, my chavrusas, more so from my Rebbe. Umi talmidai, and this is the famous line, and from my students, yoser mikulam, more than anyone. Kishem she'etz katan madliget agadol, just as a small stick can light a large log. Kach talmid katan mechaded rav. So too can doesn't mean a small in size, means a junior student, a beginning student can sharpen the rav until it can emerge from his questioning wondrous chachma. Okay, so there's a bunch of questions I want to get into. So first of all, we just got on saying that there's a tremendous, enormous chiyuv of kavod harav. The Rambam sort of says, just as he has to mechabed him, the Rebbe has to mechabed this thing. Well, how could that? We both can't be mechabed each other. What a minute! It's like a checkmate. I mean, what's going on there? And why should he mechabed him at all? Why he's to use a Yiddish phrase, he's a little pisher. Why does the Rebbe have to mechabed him at all? I mean, other than b'hadrei chamocha, kavod abriyas, based on the basic level of dignity. Why is there a chiyuv kavod? That's question number one. Then the Rambam is that's not enough. Next one is term, verb, ulakarvan. What does that entail? Next, he's equated to his chaver. What's up with that? Next, he has to be zahir. What does that indicate? And he has to love him. And then we have these two little chazal that are talking about. So what really is the Rambam? What is the Rambam driving at? So the Rebbe is chayev in kavod of the Talmud. Why? Because the student is his partner in the shalshelis and the Torah. There is no Rebbe if there's no Talmidim. There's no Talmud, no Rebbe. In other words, there's a unique relationship here. It's not just the Talmud. The Talmud is the office of the Talmud. He represents the recipient of the Masorah to the next generation. That's an important role. Without the Talmud, there is no future to Judaism. That chalos, that identity, is a mechubed role. He's not just a guy. He might be 11 years old. He might be 14 years old. He might be 23 years old. He may have a resume which has nothing on it yet. but he plays a profound role. The future of Klal Yisrael, he's a recipient of the Masorah. He's intrinsically worthy of kavod for his position, his role, not for what he accomplished. By the way, part of the challenge of Kibbut Av V'Em and Kibbut Rav is we always view it like, well, what is the mother or father done for me, right? Halakha doesn't look about that. It's the office of the parent, the office of the Rebbe, the office of the Talmud. In other words, just like a Democrat may not like President Donald Trump, but if Donald Trump is giving a State of the Union address, what is the halakha to do? That everybody, both parts of the entire Congress and Senate, must stand up because he is the president, even though they despise him because he represents the office of the president. I do kavod and yirah to my parent and to my Rebbe because they represent the office of the parent. It's not a transactional phenomenon. It's not because of what they've done that. Now, when you relate to in that way, it allows you to do kavod and yirah in a much easier way. Because basically, kavod and yirah to mom and dad, and kavod and yirah to your Rebbe, and kavod to your Talmud, in a certain sense, it's not personal. It's not about what. It's not in because they did you this, you're doing this. It's their identity. It's the chalos. It's the Talmud. He has a certain significance. Now, and so what does the Talmud do for the Rebbe? Go with that. Let me just go in order. Why must he lakarvan? Why is the Rebbe obligated to bring him close? This is a general rule in all human interaction. Teddy Roosevelt said it very succinctly. I'll just quote Teddy Roosevelt. A person does not care how much you know until they know how much you care. That is the law of nature. If the Talmidim do not feel that you care about them, they will not learn from you. How much more so that you have to perceive them as your children, but you love your children. That's it. In other words, they will not. They have to feel an emotional bond. A Rebbe that comes there, I got to do this particular Gemara, this amount of Sfaras, in and out and done. That's not even a Rebbe. That's not covered a Rav. That's not covered a Talmud. He doesn't even know who. In a certain sense, he views himself as the professor of Talmud. He is not a Rebbe. He's not a Rebbe. He's not doing the job. He's living his own fantasy. He's doing something else. That's not the job. The job is that you are there to grow the nefesh. I need to be concerned about their emotional well-being, and I need them to feel that. He has to be zahir because why does the Ram then tell you about the what? You have to be your kavod has to be equivalent to your colleague, your chaver. Right, Shade, when he gave this shiur in Pirkei Avos back in the 1980s, said the very important concept is that our natural way that we relate to all people is purely emotionally. He's my friend, I identify with them, and that's that. So what way that the halakha is trying to disrupt that mentality is move you up to the next category. How do you look at your Talmud? What's a helpful way to emotionally overcome my natural way to look at him dismissively as being a little pisher? You have to look at him as your chaver, your chavrusa. Even though he doesn't have the same kavod as your chavrusa, but you have to move in that direction. It's a way to, as an educational point, to move you, to liberate you from our natural emotional stance. And therefore, the Ram cautions us: you have to be zahir, that you are in fact relating to him objectively, and not how you emotionally feel about the Talmud. This is extremely hard, by the way. The guy who's been doing it for a long time. This is hard, okay? I'm just saying, the Ram is talking about the ideal. We do what best we can, okay? And then you have to love him. Why do you love him? Now there's a important factor. And this is something that I personally have found to be the case. A person might say that, oh, who's getting the better deal? Is it the Talmud or the Rebbe? Who's getting the better deal? The Rebbe is. Because he is getting tremendous chachma from them. In other words, number one, ain't no fear like giving shiur, which means that the fact that you have to know that you're going to give shiur on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever, is going to force you to prepare that you wouldn't, and you leave it when you learn when you don't chavrus, you'll be a little more chill, you'll be more relaxed, you're going to make more excuses for yourself. But the fact that you have to present ideas to these people on a regular basis, and they're the same ones that you cannot recycle, is a tremendous cause of tremendous creativity. Not only that, he says, and who is there's two chazal, Yos Mikulam. So they're going to cause you to be creative and ideas, and you would be nothing without them. Number one. Number two is that the phenomenon of the Talmid Katan, the small student, I mean small, the beginning student. Those students, ones who are not in your paradigm, I think Shade made this exact point. In other words, they don't share your way of seeing things. They're coming from as a complete outsider, come and ask you a question that can open up a question that you would, which will really open your mind. I've had the blessing in my life to teach at the Manhattan Jewish Experience. I have bright people in their 20s and 30s who never went to yeshiva. So they don't have any of the shared learning, but they ask questions they're very well educated. They just didn't go to yeshiva. They always ask fantastic questions because they're not limited by a pattern of thinking that you would have if you went to any given yeshiva. So therefore, they can ask things, and those things are a source of profound creativity. So that's why the Ram has the two things. The second chazal really is a parish in the first one, and that really is the essence of what the kavod. The kavod of the Rebbe to Talmud is. He is plays the important role as the recipient of the Shalshelas Masara of Masara. Two, I have to engage him emotionally and I have to bring him close and love him because A, he's not going to learn otherwise. He's my child, and B, I am getting tremendous benefit from the guy. I'm getting, as the Ram said, I'm getting olam haz and olam haba. I'm getting the best life. I should love him objectively. He's giving you tremendous good. So I want to now bring this. I want to close with one story, which will sort of summarize all these different ideas that we're talking about. So I want to take you back to the summer of 1981. I'm living in Seattle, Washington. I am 14 years old. My father, who had just started 7 years ago, 6-7 years ago, had started the Yeshiva at Or Tzafon, North Yeshiva High School, and he gets a call in the office from a person, and he turned out to be a guy named Ron Simon from Bellevue, Washington, who was currently in public school. The family was they were members of Temple Dehersh Sinai, which is the Reformed Temple in Seattle, Washington. And he had gone to the Hebrew school, the once-a-week Reformed Temple. And he learned some Hebrew, but on his own, learned how to read Chumash and Rashi by himself. And he wanted to go to yeshiva, and he wanted to matriculate in. He's making the phone calls, and he's trying to get the information so he could give his parents things. So my father, this is like, who is this guy? This guy's amazing. So he engages him, he interviews him, kids like an Eloi, and my father would call him the Gon from Bellevue, and he came for Shabbos, and this is a credit to my mother as well. He came one Shabbos, he stayed for 2 months in my house. I'll say that again. He came for Shabbos, and he stayed for 2 months. His parents would drop off clothes from time to time. And basically, my father, as the Ram says, felt there wasn't really a burden, that he felt that he would learn he was a chacham to all the Talmidim. So my father, in addition to working all week running yeshiva, which is an extremely taxing thing, would learn with all the students, and I was one of the students as well. Shabbos, we learned Shabbos afternoon, Saturday night learning, which we were into, which is amazing. Okay. We'd go out and we'd go have a good time afterwards. And then Sunday morning, and we learned, and Ron was learning. By the time Ron graduated, he had learned on his own, finished a number of Masechtas. Joe remembers Ron, and he one of the things, we go wait for a movie, he would bring the Jastrow. We did not know that he was a linguistic genius. He ultimately got a PhD in linguistics. He would read the Jastrow, so he became completely. He read a Gemara like water. It was just unbelievable. I had the opposite skill set. Always hard. Okay, so anyway, so my father just enjoyed learning with him. And I mentioned Ron because he really was, he had tremendous kavod and year to my father, 100%. On Monday night, we'll be observing his 5th Yahrzeit. But additionally, my father had tremendous kavod to him and showed love to him as he did to every kid. When we had my mother and my sisters, when we had the Shiva, much of the Shiva had a very joyous element because people came to the Shiva and shared how joyful my father made Jewish learning to them. In Seattle, in Memphis, where my father was the head of school for 3 years, in Suffolk County, many people only had a chance of Torah because of my father. He had hundreds of talmidim, thousands of people that were impacted because of that. He created talmidim who became rebbeim themselves and continues the shalshal from the Torah to this very day. So I tell you that to put it succinctly, my father was tremendous about kavod of talmidim. I remember as a 3rd grader, I'm in my father's Chumash class, okay? So he was just very enthusiastic. He would draw, Paro and Moshe on the board, and a kid would ask a question. He said, "It's an amazing question." He would just like rejoice in all the kids' questions. He honored kids, and of course, remember many times walking with Rabbi Chait, my father heard an idea, it was a joyful experience. And he had tremendous joy in sharing that. And he was able to pull this off. What he did was he pulled it off because he had a profound natural warmth, a humility, and a genuine character. They felt that on a very visceral sense. That's why he can go to everybody and they want to learn with him. Why would you want to learn with this guy? He's able to pull that off. Very few people are able to do that. And I think just as a consequence of the Shiur, because he looked at all people as his bonim, as his children to share Torah with. To put it very succinctly, Vishinat levanecha. In a certain sense, it's just that simple. Who are your bonim? Anybody who will receive a Torah idea. And if you can facilitate them, they can come out of public school, even great, better. And the greatness of a Rebbe lies not only in the knowledge, but in the care and honor to his students. And the Masorah, effective Masorah, happens only when it's given with deep respect and genuine love and mutual growth. And my father, Zecher, I don't want to say Levracha, he would feel very uncomfortable. I'm not going to say Tzaddik Levracha, Zecher Levracha, really inhabited that, really embodied that. So thank you so much for joining me and learning together and showing a measure of kavod to the legacy of Rabbi Daniel Rosenthal. Thank you so much.
Good.
Question.
Thank you, Pinny. תודה רבה. ביי.
Yes, Shakar.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So did you explain? I mean, I think it's it might be clear, but did you explain what the difference in the parent? You remarked on the big stark difference in parenting that we have.
Yeah.
Versus Ola.
Yeah.
Mom. What's the qualitative difference? In other words, I don't know. I don't know if you focused on it so much.
So between Jewish parenting, true Jewish parenting, and just parenting, which we see in the world, is that your question? What's the distinction? So it's a here would be like this. Is my job to create a productive member of society or am I nurturing a nefesh to be part of the Masorah?
In other words, is creating the productive society. Everybody agrees that you need to create.
Tikkun Olam, it's a good thing. It's a very good thing, very important thing.
Is it that an end in itself, or is it a need?
Right. To bring
Hey,
the soul
let me
into
be back.
being, to bring the soul into being, to bring the soul into being,
Beagle Town is my favorite establishment.
bring the soul into being, and to be a participant in the Masorah Torah.
Because just to have a productive person, there's no benefit to them, really.
Well, okay, so right, right. That's not really the goal. Real ultimately is to bring Tselem Elokim into being. That's really what parenting is, and that's why there's a partnership between the parents and the Rebbe Muvak.
You can't just say the parents stick to their lane and then you don't know anything about Torah, and then you just send the Rebbe that teaches them all.
Right, now again, not every parent. There is the halacha recognize that every parent's obligated to teach what they know, but it's not assumed that every parent could be a Rosh Hashiva to be able to teach the child abstract concepts on a high level. That's a specialty, and it's always recognized as a specialty. There are people who are Bali Masorah, and that's their job. And parents have to do their best to move the child through the continuum to the extent that they can, and in partnership with the Rebbe Muvak to bring the potential of the child to the world.
So the Rebbe also, there's overlap on the Rebbe's side.
100%.
The Rebbe can't teach full part Torah, which you mentioned.
Correct.
He has to also relate to the psyche of the person, to the development of the person.
Essentially. In other words, it's in America, in educational theory, we talk about student-centered education, where it's like what is the world of the child, and how can we bring this information best to the child? We're taking a step further. We want in relating to this child, there is a nefesh there. How can we allow this nefesh to blossom? And that applies to a Rebbe, whether he's teaching in the 5th grade or he's in Yeshiva Gedola. Has to be concerned about the emotional world of the person, because it's not so simple. Because a person, let me just talk about my own self. Like when I started teaching, I felt like I'm there to give a shiur. So my definition of the shiur is 3 svaros. 3 svaros in the Gemara. That's my job. I was disinterested in the reality of the students. Well, there's a funny thing about kids. They will not tolerate you being disinterested in their psyche, especially on a high school level. They made it known that they're disinterested in what I had to interested. So I had to. They forced me to be to recognize their world. Because if you're going to ignore them and they sense it's about your agenda, they're going to rebel and reject you. And they were right to do that. And they did. And they did. So, in my teaching of Torah over the years, I've learned something. I did not get this lesson in the Rambam and Halacha base so well. And it took me some time to figure that out. Yes, Esty.
The fear of the child. So, people setting up so hopefully the child will go for the soul. Do you see that in the parents, the Rav, everybody?
Both. In other words, everybody's there to nurture.
Rabbi Rosenthal, can you
repeat the question? Yeah.
Yeah.
So what Esty Lifter wanted to know is as follows. If I understand the question correctly, is that where does the role of the child's own bechira apply in the parent's role of education and bringing the child up, as well as the Rebbe's role? Is that correct? Okay. Obviously, the child's bechira is always active, and our job is to really effectuate that it'll be a true bechira. In other words, that they will see the tov of Torah. In other words, you are there to make the case. Your job is to make that as appealing as possible. Basically, from an emotional level, you raise your child basically with 2 words: joyous Judaism. Make Judaism fun. Shabbos should be a positive experience. Yom Tov should be a positive experience. Learning should be a positive experience. It should be positive, so the child can feel good about it. And then the Rebbe's job. we're not a society that, how much zrok moral talmidim we can do when we're such a minority and there's such a dominant culture that's pulling our children to other directions. How much the zrok moral talmidim tool can go. I think Bisman has said very little. You have to take an approach of a loving, nurturing approach by and large. Now, there's a loss for that as well. But that's really, and to allow the child to be here, and then the kid will choose, and the kids, they always do, and you may not always be happy with that, and that's it. And if you hold by Bechira, not about you. You do your thing. You gotta, in other words, if you felt you could say, I did a good job, I did all I could to raise my child well, and the child rejects Torah because let's call it the term off the derech, it is painful. It's not your fault. There's a Bechira. And conversely, I did a poor job raising my kid becomes a Rosh Hashiva. You can't be taking credit. Well, what did you do? You did a terrible job parenting. Your kid became a Rosh Hashiva despite your pathetic parenting. Okay? You cannot take you gotta do the best you can. This Rabbi Man has a great phrase, and I will share it right now. You know better to pilot a 747 than you do to raise a child. This is very hard. I don't want to minimize it. You do the best you can. You don't get to, there's no do-overs. You make a decision based upon the situation, and then you see, that was maybe not a good decision. Okay, well, that's it. It's a new game. It's unfortunate. You do the best you can. All you can do. But these are but just know what the first question is, well, what am I doing? What am I trying to accomplish? Your job is to nourish the psyche and soul of a person, both as a parent and then, of course, as a Rebbe. There's a completely different, and there are a lot of consequences, and all these consequences are a natural manifestation of that. It's a completely different paradigm that we see in the world, but we're so affected. We can't help it, but we're very affected by educational institutions that we've been to. That we come with much baggage. That's all we can do. That's it.
Rabbi Rosenthal.
Yes.
There's a saying that in the parlance, in common parlance, it seemed to be a good choice at the time.
It seemed to be a good choice at the time. Leslie, 100% correct. Yes. That's it. And don't beat yourself up. You do the best you can. That's it. Yes, question.
Yeah, Torah is where it says Shei Habanim
Yeah.
Is that in contrast to parents, or is that like opposed?
That's a good question.
What's the question?
So the Rambam in the last Rambam that we brought up, the Rambam says that you have to be conscientious with your Talmidim and to love them because they are the bottom, the Mahanim Ba'olam Hazeh Olam Haba, that they benefit you in this world and the next world. I don't think it is different than parenting, but a parent naturally feels that the children benefit them because it's the natural narcissism of a parent is to feel that way about their kids. But the Rebbe does not have a narcissistic connection to the Talmud because he's not their child. He has to realize that, in fact, this student in front of him, this child of his, who's in his shiur, is in fact benefiting in this world. He's giving you the best possible life of this world, and of course, it's the next world because your nefesh will be a different nefesh because of that, the person's engagement in Talmud Torah. Well, the natural, if he feels that way, the parent naturally feels the benefit, generally. I don't know if they have to tell you. In other words, remember, it's coming there. He says you have to be zachir and to love them. You don't have to typically instruct parents to be careful about your children and to love them. And if you do, we got deeper problems. In other words, typically the way that Hashem created the natural teva of man is that we love our children automatically. Whatever, even though they didn't do anything, because it's a narcissism. It's a natural narcissism.
It doesn't tell you to love your father.
Doesn't tell you how to love your cover.
You have to love the student like you.
Right. Person loves you naturally love your friends because they're your friends. You chose them. You love your friend because they're awesome. Super Bowl Sunday. Where are we going to go? Oh, we're watching the game. It's going to be awesome. You don't say, it's not an intellectual calculus. Like, who are you going to, do I want to watch the Super Bowl with this guy or not? That's it. you feel it. It's not an intellectual calculus, I don't think. Okay, any questions?
Rabbi Rosenthal.
Yes, Rabbi Howie Burstein.
Yeah, in light of what you're saying, this Svara, that it's not just a body of knowledge, but it's a whole thing of grooming his soul.
Yep.
So it could be that that's why the Rambam says that a Talmud who's low kahogan, you're not allowed to teach.
Well, you do have to teach him. You can't teach him in the base medrash. You can't, in other words, you can't give him the regular, he has to be in a different environment. In other words, if you could teach him the regular education in the regular situation, it's like throwing a rock into Marcolis, it's like a Avodah Zarah, which is the whole question, exactly what that another analogy, okay, we're not doing that right now, but it's you're harming the child. If the child is, I'll use if you're going to put the child who is off the derech in a yeshiva where he must sit at a desk and learn 1, 2, 3 the Torah a day, you are injuring him and everybody in his environment. Bad. That child needs a separate environment and a separate engagement. We don't throw away children. You just have to deal with them differently. Okay, with that note, we will thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Good.
Thank you.
All the best.